Mr. Ryan, would you come up to the stage?
I will.
Oh,
Hello. Hello. It's so good to see you all. We are so excited to be able to spend part of our day here at the NAFA debate seminar. I want to start, of course, we have many organizations that have made it possible for us to make this tour. So I have to thank the Benesse Corporation and GTEC for Students, the Japan Debate Association, NAFA, as well as the Committee on International Discussion and Debate. Actually, they've had this sort of exchange between JDA and the CIDD for a very long time. In fact, this Japan-U.S. exchange tour started in 1967. I was only 45 years old when that started. No. But actually, I have had an opportunity to be a part of this tour before. And actually, I was in the seat that Sean and Edmund are in now in 1995. And in 1995, we also had our last event was a debate against some team from the NAFA organization. And they did a fantastic job. And I need to start by saying the entire reason that we wanted to come to Japan was to have debates like we had today. So I have to ask you for a favor, for me. Will you do it? Can you join me in thanking all 4 of the debaters? Didn't they do an incredible job? Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
You know, the history of this exchange has brought a lot of ideas both ways. There's been influence for the country of Japan and influence on the country of the United States. It's been a long-standing exchange. And as for myself, the tour has had an incredible impact on me. In fact, I think I will take this young man's advice in the back, and I'll apply for immigration, and I was staying in Japan. So actually, this will be the first stop of my new tour that will extend beyond this. We have had many opportunities to speak with many different groups in Japan that are all interested in debate. We spoke with high school students, a lot of high school students. I mean a lot of high school, there were probably too many high school students. A lot of high school students we spoke with. We spoke with college students who were interested in debate. We spoke with business persons in Japan who were interested in debate. And then, of course, we spoke with a number of former debaters, some of which are debate coaches in Japan right now. So there is an incredible interest in debate in the nation of Japan right now. I know that Ministry of Education is encouraging debate, but I will say there are so many people interested in debate. If for just 1 second, just one small moment today, you thought, oh, I want to know more about debate, you can contact some of these people. You can contact all of these different people and communicate about debate. You're using Facebook for getting the vote. We also have a Facebook page on the tour, and the Business Persons Association also has a Facebook page. And there's a Facebook page with many former debaters. So maybe you can use Facebook and have a way to find, we say in the US, or meet with many of these people who are interested and involved in debate that are going on. Now, I do want to talk about one comment real quickly, if I can. Just one comment. I heard that for many of the students in debate that they're first-year students. Is that true? She didn't say this guy. Me, I mean, she didn't say. She didn't say this guy. And for many of them, they probably haven't heard a lot about counterplans. Is that true? Is it true? Counterplans? Well, you can say either yes or no. Up and down means yes. Side to side means no. So have you heard a lot about counterplans that the negative team presented? Make a lot of arguments about them. We had a great opportunity to judge at the East-West tournament hosted by the CASA committee. And in every debate that we saw, there was a counterplan. There was a counterplan discussed. And this is a very interesting issue of what is a counterplan. You have to begin with understanding what a counterplan is before you can move on for that. A counterplan is not just something the negative can present. It has to be a proposal which serves as a reason to reject the plan. It's got to be a reason to reject the plan. That's different than saying a reason to accept the negative. These two things are not the same. It can't just be a plan that the negative has that is a good idea. Typically, when you have counterplans, they're intended to solve the same problem that the affirmative presents and avoid bad consequences. So you've got to start with what is a counterplan. Simple definition. A counterplan has to be a reason to reject the affirmative. It's got to be a reason to reject the affirmative plan because there needs to be a focus on the plan. When the affirmative starts the debate, there needs to be a way to debate about the ideas the affirmative presents. You've got to test those ideas, we say. You're going to argue against them if you're on the negative. You're going to present ideas against them. The debate's not about competing plans. It's about burdens in the debate. This is a very, very old theory. This theory of burdens is probably 600 years old. Really old. And it says that when you start off, there has to be some assumption against change. So the affirmative starts off, they have to tackle this burden of proof. Burden of proof. They have to prove some idea. And after the affirmative starts that, then the negative has what we call a burden of rejoinder. Rejoinder is a fancy word, but it just means negative must respond. They must respond. The negative has to respond. So if you ask yourself, what's the job of the affirmative team and the negative team? Okay? The affirmative team's job is to present a good idea that supports change. Some kind of change has to be discussed. And the negative's job, it has to be to disprove the affirmative's idea for change. There are a lot of different ways that they can do that. And one way that they can do that, one excellent way, is to have a counterplan. They have a counterplan. And a counterplan is a great strategy. A counterplan can be your friend. A counterplan removes a great deal of the affirmative offense. And it can allow the negative to propose a change as well. The affirmative proposes change, so the negative can propose a change as well. It can do both of those things. And the counterplan can often simplify the debate, often down to just one issue of what the counterplan revolves around. This is really important for debaters to make the issues as simple as they possibly can. Here's an example from today. We had a debate today where the affirmative said we should increase the consumption tax. And they had an advantage that was investor collapse. And let's say we give them 10 points for that. I'm just making things up. Okay? 10 points, random. And the negative presents a disadvantage that says it lowers consumption. So let's take points off of that. Then the negative presents actually two counterplans. One to privatize pensions, and one to increase the savings tax. And they say it will help the economy. Let's give them 10 points also. And the affirmative says there's a disadvantage to moving money abroad, so maybe that hurts a little bit. So you're trying to add up what the total in this round is for a counterplan. But here's the thing about a counterplan. A counterplan has one extremely important burden. And that burden is competition. Competition. This is a kind of important word that you need to know if you're working with a counterplan. And the counterplan competition basically is like a math equation. Are you good at math?
No.
Me neither. I'm terrible at math. But I understand that this symbol has some meaning. Somebody told me that once. What's the meaning of this one symbol? What does it mean?
Larger, better.
Yeah. Greater than, bigger. Counterplan must be more important than the plan. Sometimes you might say the counterplan must have superiority to the plan. That's the burden of competition. Competition asks the question, does the counterplan force a choice between itself and the affirmative plan? In other words, is the counterplan a reason to reject the affirmative? Very simple. That's the definition of a counterplan. So it asks this question. Otherwise, if it doesn't have to be a reason to reject the counterplan, then all the negative has to do is make some argument where they tie with the affirmative. You know, if it's equal, that's all that they had to do. So in one situation, let's say the affirmative says they saved 10,000 lives. Well, all the negative would have to do then is feed 10,000 people in some other area of the world, let's say South China. And it would be enough to win negative. But that's not good debate, because it doesn't test the ideas that the affirmative presented. So that idea of debate is a little bit problematic. Instead, competition is like balancing, okay? Like a scale. It asks which one has more benefit, the affirmative plan or the counterplan. Which one is more important? And so we need to ask ourselves, how can we understand this problem of competition? How can we understand this problem of competition? How is there a forced choice between a counterplan and affirmative plan? How do we get to that situation where there's a forced choice? Well, there are different types of competition. One way is to say they're not possible for simultaneous adoption. So if the affirmative wants to increase the consumption tax, the negative could counterplan to decrease a consumption tax. You can't do both at the same time. There's a forced choice. You can't increase the consumption tax and decrease the consumption tax. They're opposites. But in that case, probably that's not enough, because just doing the opposite, that's not necessarily a reason why one is better than the other. So you need some other standard to understand what's the benefit for the counterplan. So I use this idea of net benefits. Net benefit is, and again, it's a math word, so I apologize. I'm not good at math. But it asks, is simultaneous adoption of the affirmative and the counterplan, or the affirmative alone, is not as good as the counterplan. So if the affirmative says to increase the consumption tax to generate money for pensions, the counterplan might be to privatize pensions to save that system, and a disadvantage that taxes hurt the poor. This disadvantage is really important, because the disadvantage, it says why the counterplan is a better idea than just the affirmative plan. So what happens in the world if the two options are not mutually exclusive? What if there's a world where you can adopt them both at the same time? Then we use this word permutation, or sometimes you might hear people say both adoption. Permutation just means a combination. That's all it means. And if we're talking about a permutation, then we're talking about a combination of the affirmative and the counterplan together. It's used to illustrate that the counterplan is not a reason to reject the affirmative, and it helps in asking if there's a forced choice. Now here's the math equation. The counterplan, which has its advantages, minus, I think. I'm not good at math, help me. Minus the disadvantages must be greater than the plan, which is its advantages minus disadvantages, plus the counterplan, which is its advantages minus disadvantages. Whew, that's a lot of math. Let me make it simpler. I can make it simpler, I promise. Simple, simple, simple. Just like that. Just like that. So if you're weighing the combination, again, it's just which one is heavier. It's just which ones are heavier, as they're involved in the counterplan and the discussion that we had for things today. Now, in the debate that we had today, we saw an interesting example of combining both of these together. The permutations, they actually asked the judge to imagine the affirmative plan in the world of the counterplan. Maybe take a picture in your mind, imagine the counterplan, and put the affirmative inside of that also. So the negative suggested we have a privatized pension system, and they suggested a savings tax. And what if we added into that an increased consumption tax? Everybody's idea, all together. The affirmative says increase the consumption tax, negative says privatize the pension system, and put a tax on savings. If you put all three of those together, then what kind of thing do you have? Well, if the negative in this world presents disadvantages to a consumption tax, which are solved by privatized pensions, then probably the negative is in trouble. If the disadvantage is solved by the combination of these things together, it will be difficult for the negative to make the argument. Let me show you why. In this debate that we had a counterplan to increase the savings tax because it will generate a lot of revenue without taxing consumption. And the argument the negative makes is the savings tax stimulates economic growth. It causes consumption. The disadvantage was that a consumption tax lowers consumption. If you put these two things together, here's what happens. In the permutation, if you do a savings tax and a consumption tax, the consumption tax sends a signal to investors, and if it lowers consumption, that won't hurt because a savings tax encourages people to spend money. If you put the two of them together, the savings tax encourages people to actually spend more. So maybe that's the best option to the world. This idea of the permutation, it opens up a lot of options for both sides. For both sides. So the negative also has new arguments that they can make. The negative can run disadvantages to the permutation. They could say that the combination of doing both at the same time is too much. That a consumption tax and a savings tax would be a burden on the economy. That's the argument that they said if they had more time, that's the argument the negative wanted to present. The disadvantage to the permutation might be that overtaxing hurts the economy, but it has to be different reason than just consumption, because privatizing pensions and a savings tax doesn't have a disadvantage that you could weigh in this. So the negative has to come up with an argument that the combination of all these things together is itself a bad idea, which I think was the argument that they wanted to present. So, okay, I'm going to put this up on the NAFA website, this PowerPoint presentation. It's just my one point that I wanted to talk with you about. And here's the one great thing about today and coming together, is that you've got an opportunity to meet with a number of different people that are all interested in debate. I mean, we are so overjoyed to be here with you, but you've got other people that you should have events like this with. I look around and I see Tomura Sensei is here. I see Kitano Sensei is here. I see Ayabe Sensei. I see Usui Sensei. I see many people in the Japanese community that have incredible knowledge about debate. Oh, my dream is that after this meeting, you will continue to talk with those people, extend your community, make it much larger, build your membership in NAFA. That's my dream, that you can talk with all of these people about their experiences. Treasure those people's experiences, because that's what debate is all about. And that's my very last note. I'm going to read the decision here in just one second, but that's my very last note. We have had this opportunity to come and do this debate and to tour around Japan, but the real benefit of this tour is being able to meet all of these incredible people in Japan. Debate is not about ideas. Debate is about community and building community with people. Building community with people. Debate has some of the best people that you will ever meet, and some of your closest friends will be in debate. So I appreciate that. The decision for this debate from the NAFA side is we have, let's see, almost 53 votes. 53 votes. 61 votes actually, they added up. See, I'm bad at math. So the affirmative has 26 votes. Negative has 35 votes. So congratulations to the negative team. Woo! I know the speaker is going to close the ceremony. I just want to say one more time, thank you so much for inviting us here to talk with you today. It really has been our pleasure. We have really enjoyed all of our time here in Japan. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.